everyone, it's me, Arielle, and this is Wednesday Warriors. I just took a shower and I'm kind of in my pajamas for the night, so it's a little bit late. Anyway, the topic that I am going to be covering today is in regards to a question by a viewer, and the question is, how do I come to terms with not being perfect, accept my own imperfections as normal, and deal with the demands placed on me to be perfect by those around me? I really wanted to answer this question because so many people, eating disordered or not, are just so engrossed with this topic of perfection and imperfection. And it can really become an obsession, whether it's body image related, beauty related, achievement related. I mean, you can go as far as grade related. I mean, there are so many things to be obsessed about where flaws are concerned and imperfections are concerned. And it's a really unfortunate thing that people are obsessed with this, because it really takes away from living your life. And I don't say this to sound, pompous and righteous, but I say it because I used to be the same way. I was extremely obsessed with being perfect in a wide variety of categories. Just definitely a typical perfectionist, anorexic sort of mindset. I know that's a little bit stereotypical, but it is very true that eating disordered people tend to be perfectionists, or at least have sort of somewhat of an obsessive mindset. In any case, I want to talk about this question because it's simple, but it's complex, as are many of the questions that I choose to answer. Not only does everyone have imperfections, but everyone has problems. Everyone has issues, and if you feel like you're the only one, that's where you're going to run into being afraid of being imperfect. But you can learn to embrace your imperfections if you don't think of them as imperfections. Imperfections sounds like such an ugly word, and sometimes just the stereotypes or the stigma around a word can really change our perception about it. Okay, so first things first. How do I come to terms with not being perfect? Well, honestly, it can take a while. I mean, there are definitely still days that I have where I don't like something about myself, I don't like the way I did something, I'm constantly wondering what other people think, but I've come a long way from where I used to be, and I'm so much happier because of it. And letting go of this having to be perfect attitude is going to really, really benefit you, but you have to stick with it, because how do I come to terms with not being perfect? I mean, that is the question, isn't it? I mean, if we could come to terms with not being perfect, we would be okay, we would feel good, we would be able to get on with our lives. But you have to remember that nobody's perfect, and I know that's such a typical cliched statement, but it's so true. Nobody is perfect. Perfect does not exist. And imperfections are so much more beautiful than perfection is. In order to come to terms with not being perfect, you have to really embrace the good qualities you have. You have to really, really learn to love all the good things about yourself. And then once you've done that, which even that can take a while, but once you've done that, then you have to start to embrace your flaws and your imperfections. And that's not to say that you shouldn't be continually trying to make yourself a better person, because I think that's something that everyone sort of strives for in their life. They know that they're not so great at something, or they know that they could change their attitude about something, and they want to make themselves a better person, and that's very good and that's very commendable, as long as the goal ultimately is not perfection, because perfection is not achievable. So essentially you're setting yourself up for failure from the get-go if your goal is perfection. You need to let go of that whole perfection thing. I mean, perfection is a fallacy. Okay, so accepting your own imperfections as normal. That's the second part of the viewer question. And they are normal, and I'll tell you why. Because no matter how alone you might feel about a certain flaw or imperfection that you have, you're not alone. I mean, just think how lonely having an eating disorder is, and think how alone you felt at some point throughout your struggle, or even how alone you still do feel. But are you alone? I mean, I am making this video for a recovery collaboration right now, and there are 14 women on this collaboration that make videos for it weekly. But besides that, we have something like over 350 viewers on this channel, and that's just a little tiny microcosm of the world. There are a lot of people with eating disorders out there, and even though we might at one time or another feel alone because we have one, we know we're not. We're not alone, and you have to remind yourself, you're not alone. The more lonely that you feel, the worse off you're going to be. So you have to put that out of your mind. You have to really use logic. You have to hammer that logic into your brain. You're not alone. Whatever the imperfection might be, whether it's about a body part being too big, too small, too this, too that, somebody else out there, and most likely many, many, many other people out there, have that same imperfection. And to be quite honest with you, who's to say it's an imperfection? I mean, especially if lots of people have that. Or maybe if you are in fact the only one who has that imperfection, isn't that more special, more unique? I mean, I just don't understand where this whole idea of bodily imperfections comes from. But I mean, other imperfections don't have to be about the body. They can be about any little part of you. I know how it is. I mean, it can be that you wish you were smarter, prettier, more tan, taller, shorter. You know, like the list can go on and on and on, and chances are if you really sat there and wrote down all the things you wanted to change about yourself, you might have a pretty long list. But you have to really remember that everybody out there has something they don't like about themselves. Everybody out there has an imperfection, and you're not the only one. So keep telling yourself that. Don't let it go. You know, you have to tell yourself to cut the crap sometimes and just stand there in front of the mirror and say to yourself, I'm not perfect, but I'm fine just the way I am. So the last part of the viewer question is about dealing with the demands placed on us to be perfect by those around us. You gotta speak up. I mean, that's what it really comes down to. I was actually just talking about something similar in the support group that I lead last night. You have to use your voice. I mean, you have a voice for a reason, and we worry so much about what other people think that we keep that voice hidden, we don't speak up, we let people push us around or walk all over us just because we're afraid of the reaction, just because we don't want to be thought imperfect. And that is no way to live. I mean, that's like hell on earth. I mean, you don't want to be a little shadow of a person, a little shell of a person, constantly walking on eggshells, you know, constantly trying to better yourself for somebody else. The world is not supposed to work that way. And you're going to be a much more amazing person, so courageous and brave, if you can just let that go and slowly be able to walk on your own 2 feet and use the voice that you were given. You know, along those lines, perfection is not something I want to achieve. I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. I mean, I definitely had my own little visions of perfection back when I was struggling a lot, but I don't want to be perfect right now, and I know I'm nowhere near perfect, but I don't care because I'm happy. And once you have that little egg of happiness in your life, you know, you're not looking for something else. Being perfect isn't going to make you happy, even if it was attainable. I mean, what is perfect anyway? You really need to ask yourself. And I think I'm actually going to end this video with a question, because sometimes there are no cut and dry answers. So, what is perfect anyway?